quite a bit of this. We also use a company called InfoLink on the West Marine side that gives us quite a bit of information as well. But again, I'm sure you've heard a lot of this already. Florida is the key fishing state, right? Florida is the #1 fishing state in the country. We have over 3 million anglers in Florida. Retail sales related to fishing are over $5 billion, which, you know, we have a little slice of that, which is great. Over 128,000 jobs related to fishing in the state of Florida, which is fantastic. #1 in registered boats by a good margin. Just to put it in perspective, West Marine has roughly 300 stores. Around 50 of those stores are located in Florida. So my territory covers from California to Georgia. The bulk of my stores are in Florida, thankfully. You know, it's a pretty big area, but I spend the majority of my time here in Florida, which is fantastic. And you know, for us, West Marine, we have about 1.5 million customers in our database. And as you might imagine, that, you know, spans the range of every water activity that you can imagine. The #1 activity, coast to coast, freshwater, saltwater, inshore, coastal, doesn't matter. #1 activity that our customers list. This is the reason they have a boat is fishing, and that is irrelevant whether it's you know, in the Great Lakes or in Southern California, in the Pacific Northwest, or in South Florida. And we also have a pretty healthy contingent of people that don't own boats that still list their #1 activity as fishing, primarily kayak fishery, which is you know, blowing up right now in all over the country, but primarily in Florida. And the last comment on this one is that anglers today provide a little over $46 million in conservation funding, mostly through licenses and the taxes they pay on stuff that they buy from us, and also for fuel. So Florida has one of the top economies in the U.S., right? We're one of the biggest states, and a lot of that is based on tourism. 105 million people visit Florida every year, and the state estimates that 9 million people come to the state, where 1 million of those folks come for either going to the beaches or doing stuff on the water. So a pretty significant percentage of the largest piece of the economic pie for Florida comes out of fishing and other water activities. And we have activities, industries like the cruise industry. Florida's the #1 cruise industry state in the United States. A lot of those activities are related to fishing, and a few others. So there's a lot of people that are employed by the fishing industry in the state of Florida. So 2,200 miles of shoreline. Most of those obviously are in areas where there's beaches, and that's a pretty popular activity, but a lot of that in shoreline is occupied by folks that want to fish. So that's a pretty big deal. 40% of all U.S. visitors to the state of Florida, because we don't have that data for international visitors, their main reason for visiting was, again, to do something in, on, or around the water. And that's a big impact for us. Again, 300 stores, over 50 of those stores for us are located in Florida, so there's no, that's not by mistake, not an error. Boat sales. So boat sales in Florida, $2 billion annually, which is, again, as I mentioned earlier, the top state in the country for boat sales. The largest activity that boats are purchased for, not just for West Marine, but in the industry as a whole, is fishing. So there's everything from pontoon boats to center consoles to the big sport fish. Fishing is still far and away the #1 driver in boat sales, and that's a pretty big deal. Diving and snorkeling, $900 million industry for Florida. Again, a lot of that. Spearfishing and other folks that are diving recreationally for fishing, and that's a pretty big industry there too. Okay, so what is our industry? As I mentioned, I work for West Marine, and we deal strictly in water life activities. So we don't really cover anything having to do with hunting or camping, as opposed to some of the other folks that are in our space. The primary activity we do is around things on and around the water. We don't sell boats, but pretty much everything else. Although we do sell kayaks and paddleboards and such. So there are thousands of chandleries and tackle shops that occupy the bulk of the industry. We estimate that we're roughly about 20% of the total retail aftermarket of the stuff that we do, which is pretty small considering that we're the largest in the country, really the world. The overwhelming majority of this stuff that's sold here in Florida and in the country is sold by independents. These are small businesses. You know, they're all of the tackle shops that we've grown up going to all over the country, right, and all over the state. So although we are the largest in our space, and some of you might remember the Boaters Worlds and the Boat USs of the world that existed some years ago, we're still pretty small relative to the total economy of just for Florida, but nationally in relation to aftermarket parts and pieces that are sold. So when we talk about supporting anglers, we're not just talking about supporting the big guys like West Marine or Bass Pro. We're talking about supporting the literal thousands and thousands of independent small businesses in the state of Florida and all over the country that are supported by recreational anglers, which is a pretty big deal. You're also talking about equipment manufacturers, which support groups like the ESA, super important. And of course the boat builders and all the hospitality, restaurants, hotels, all that stuff that are supported by anglers as well. So how big is fishing? So when I want to know something, I always Google it, right? Everybody goes to Google. So I Googled fishing, and there were 613 million results on Google for fishing. It's pretty big. I Googled hunting, assuming that, that'd probably be bigger, not bigger, 451 million returns. Cycling, 317 million returns. Kayaking, 64 million returns. So less, fishing is pretty big. So that's just on Google. So then I went to Amazon, which is the world's largest store, and I said, okay, let's go to fishing. 22.6 million results on Amazon. So there are 2.6 million things for sale under the term fishing on Amazon. Golf, which I just automatically assume would be bigger in terms of stuff for sale, 1.7 million on Amazon. By the way, golf was bigger on Google. There was over 1 billion returns for golf on Google, but on Amazon, less, quite a bit less actually, at 1.7 million. Hunting, 1.8 million, and kayaking and paddling, which was not all that different on Google, only less than 100,000 returns in terms of things to buy. So fishing is in the world's largest marketplace, which of course is directly from Amazon, and the Amazon marketplace was far and away, fishing was far and away the biggest of all of these non-sports related activities. When you start Googling football, things like that, they all kind of dominate. But in the non-sports world, fishing is the #1 activity. So let's take a look at that activity. This was a graphic that came from Gary Jennings in the Key Florida Fishing Group, part of the ASA. And there's a ton of activity around. This is all coastal saltwater. This was presented at the ASA conference in New Orleans a couple of months ago. Unfortunately, I missed that because of the hurricanes that we had down here. But this illustrates why Florida is so important. 36.5% of the total saltwater fishing that's done is done in Florida. And when you connect that with the Gulf, it's half. Half of the fishing that's done in the United States is done, in our waters on one side or the other, including the Gulf, and that's a pretty big deal. And as we all know, most of the folks here, I bet, are Floridians. A lot of that's done in South Florida. A lot of that's done in the Keys. A lot of that's done in the Everglades, or areas that are connected to that, and that's a pretty big deal. So this is an interesting graphic. This is internal West Marine information, and we took a look at our sales relative to fishing license sales. As you can see through the graph here, it's a pretty good correlation. The bars are retail sales in the millions, and the line are fishing license sales. And what you see here is you see a pretty good correlation to fishing license sales to our sales, and kind of self-evident based on the percentage of people that list fishing as their #1 activity for West Marine. And this only goes out to 2013. If you look at 2014 through 2016, we've continued to see fishing license sales creep up a little bit. They were just about flat in 2014. Took a little bit of an increase in 2015, and then the early reports in 2016 is they were up somewhere in the 2 to 3% range, which is really good. We personally are really happy about that because there's a very direct correlation with our sales and fishing license sales. And again, remember, fishing license sales, along with a couple of other things, fund quite a bit of conservation money from anglers as well. About fishing equipment. So these next few slides are going to be pretty encouraging before we get to the end and kind of the call to action, in my opinion. This is 2014 over 2015. Again, this came from the information from the ASA from a couple months ago. This is showing the increases in what's going on, and what the only areas that had a decrease were fishing line and reels, which is not great because that's people aren't buying new gear, but they're buying gear to go fishing. Lures, bait, and terminal tackle had some pretty healthy increases, and then all of the other fishing equipment. So they're not buying new rods and reels, landing on those rods and reels, but they are buying everything else, which indicates that these are trips, these are increases in trips that are happening, which is very encouraging to us. So now we're going to take a look at something that I know a lot of organizations are looking at, a lot of industries are looking at, which is millennials versus non-millennials.